There is something untouchable about a woman who has passed through menopause and emerged not weaker, but more formidable, not softened by surrender, but sharpened by truth. She has stopped bleeding, but she has not stopped feeling. In fact, she feels more, not emotionally volatile, but spiritually aware, psychologically awake, sensually sovereign, and that frightens them. Because the postmenopausal woman, who has embraced her shadow, can see through performance. She no longer responds to flattery like a flower turning toward the sun. She sees the intentions behind words. She feels the lies before they leave the tongue. She knows when presence is real and when it's only pretending. This isn't magic, it's maturity, it's integration. It's decades of self-abandonment finally alchemized into discernment. Men who fear this woman are not truly afraid of her. They are afraid of what she reflects back to them, the truth they've hidden from themselves, the truth that dominance is a mask, that control is not connection, that charm cannot replace depth, that a woman who no longer needs approval will not be manipulated by the illusion of love. She has met her shadow and made peace with it, and because of that, she is no longer ruled by the unconscious desire to be chosen. Now she is the chooser, and that reversal of power shatters fragile egos. Carl Jung taught that the shadow holds all that we reject: our rage, our sensuality, our need, our magic. For most of her life, she was taught to hide those things. Be polite, be pleasing, be grateful, be quiet. And she obeyed, not out of weakness, but out of survival. But menopause is a death, and from that death, a rebirth. When her body stopped performing for the world, stopped producing, stopped accommodating, it began to speak truths she could no longer ignore. Truths like, you don't have to give yourself away to be worthy, or, desire is not dangerous, it is divine, or, your silence is not strength unless it comes from sovereignty. So she began to unlearn everything. She unlearned that aging is loss. She unlearned that longing makes her weak. She unlearned that attention from men is proof of value. And as she shed those skins, she found something deeper than confidence. She found her self-possession, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that doesn't seek to be seen, the kind that knows it is whole. That self-possession unsettles many men, especially those who equate youth with obedience, beauty with vulnerability, and power with silence. They don't know what to do with her now. She won't compete, she won't chase, she won't explain. She simply is, and that being carries weight. Gravitas, magnetism, the kind that cannot be performed or bought or copied, the kind that must be lived into. There are men who will try to diminish it. She's bitter. She's too intense. She's masculine now. These are not observations, they are projections. They are the last defenses of a paradigm that cannot handle a woman who is free, because she is free now. Free from the tyranny of menstruation. Free from the biology of reproduction. Free from the cultural scripts that tie a woman's value to her youth. Her body is no longer a battleground, it is a temple, and she worships there every day. Yes, she has embraced her darkness. She has befriended the parts of herself that once scared her, the voice that says no without apology, the appetite that asks for touch without shame, the grief that refuses to be silenced, the intuition that no longer waits for proof. She no longer sees these parts as flaws. She sees them as powers, because they are what make her whole. And wholeness, as Jung knew, is terrifying to those who live in fragments. She is no longer a fantasy, she is a force. And if a man wants to stand with her, he must also meet his shadow. He must face his fear of being fully known. He must stop seeking mothering in his lover. He must stop confusing control with intimacy. She does not need to be rescued. She does not need to be worshipped. She needs only to be met. If he cannot meet her truly, vulnerably, entirely, she will not hate him. She will simply walk away. She walks away not with bitterness, but with clarity. Because a woman who has embraced her shadow no longer grieves the loss of illusions. She grieves the time she spent living under them. And once that grief has been fully felt, it sharpens her like a blade, not to harm, but to cut through what no longer serves. To sever ties with false comfort. To remove herself from any space where she must shrink to be loved. This kind of woman, whole, awakened, postmenopausal, is not here to entertain a man's unhealed ego. She is not here to teach him what he should have learned before he came to her. She is not his mother, not his muse, not his emotional nurse. She is his mirror. And in that mirror, he will see everything he fears about himself reflected back. Through her stillness, her standards, her gaze. It's why some men run. Not because she's cruel, but because she's clear. She is clear about what she feels. Clear about what she wants. Clear about what she will no longer tolerate. The woman who once whispered her needs, now speaks them with unwavering presence. She no longer hopes someone will get the hint. She says it, out loud, without trembling. And if they flinch, if they call her too much, if they blame her tone, she knows that's not her burden to carry. She has spent decades swallowing her voice for the comfort of others. Now she lets her voice rise not in rage, but in reclamation. Carl Jung wrote that a woman who confronts her shadow gains a kind of psychic sovereignty. She becomes immune to manipulation. Not because she is armored, but because she is anchored. Her sense of self no longer depends on who approves, who responds, or who stays. It depends on truth. And this truth, her inner compass, becomes the pulse she lives by. She stops trying to be good, she starts trying to be real. And real. Women are dangerous to men who only know how to relate to fantasies. The fantasy of the eternally soft woman, the agreeable woman, the forgiving, self-sacrificing, endlessly available woman. That fantasy crumbles. The moment he meets a woman who has outgrown it, she does not play hard to get. She is hard to get. Because the entrance to her heart is no longer paved by charm, promises, or potential. It is guarded by her wisdom. And wisdom sees beyond performance. It sees the wounds behind the bravado, the shame behind the cruelty, the emptiness behind the chase, and she refuses to mother it, because she has already mothered herself. Through the dark nights of hormonal chaos, through the deaths of old dreams, through the silence of being unseen in a world obsessed with youth, she has held her own hand. She has rocked her own sorrow. She has spoken gently to the girl inside her who was never allowed to be angry, never allowed to want, never allowed to rest. And now she wants everything that girl was denied, not from a place of lack, but from a place of rightness, of return, of sacred demand. So when a man shows up in her life, she does not ask, will he stay? She asks, can he meet me where I've met myself? And if he cannot, if he runs from depth, dodges silence, fears the dark corners of her desire, then she lets him run. She does not chase. She does not convince. She does not grieve what was never aligned, because she knows what she is. She is the storm and the shelter, the question and the answer, the ache and the healing, and she has no desire to be understood by those who have not yet understood themselves. Men who are brave will stay, not because they can handle her, but because they want to, because they are drawn not just to her fire, but to her stillness, her softness that is not submission, but strength, her ability to love without losing herself. Those men exist, and when they meet her, they will not be afraid of her shadow. They will recognize it because they, too, will have danced with their own in her presence. Something ancient stirs, not lust, not conquest, but remembrance. The kind of remembering that pulls a man out of his shallow roles and back into something more elemental. His own soul whispers to him in her silence, not because she is trying to inspire him, but because she is not trying at all. She is simply being, and in that being, there is no performance, no mask, no pleasing, only presence. A presence so unwavering that it unsettles men who rely on distraction to escape themselves. She will not entertain half-truths. She will not play roles in someone else's unspoken fantasy. She sees through what is not said. She listens not with her ears but with her knowing. That knowing, instinctive, embodied, fully felt, is not taught, it is earned. Earned through years of being dismissed. Years of gaslighting, years of trying to prove her softness while the world misread her silence. Years of bleeding in bathrooms, crying in kitchens, screaming in pillows only to rise again with eyes clearer than before. And now, she owes nothing, not her time, not her beauty, not her body. She does not give unless it aligns with the deepest truth of her spirit, and that truth is no longer ashamed of its hunger. Yes, she's still hungers. Not for validation, not for youth, not for fairy tales, but for truth, connection, presence, passion that doesn't perform, touch that doesn't take, conversations that rupture something shallow and pull her into the sacred. And if that cannot be found in a man, she will not settle. She will turn inward toward poetry, toward the moon, toward solitude, toward her own reflection, and say, here, I have you, I always have. Carl Jung believed that the integration of the shadow is the path to individuation, that to become whole, one must embrace not just the light but the dark, not just the conscious but the hidden, not just the feminine that nurtures but the feminine that destroys illusion. This woman has walked that path. She has not only embraced her shadow, she has become intimate with it, sat beside it when no one else would, danced with it until it no longer threatened her, and in doing so, she claims something men are often too afraid to face. Their own inner feminine, the part that feels deeply, that longs, that cries, that collapses when no one is watching, the part they were taught to hide, to harden, to silence. When they stand before a post-menopausal woman who has done her shadow work, they are not just seeing her power, they are seeing their own denied self reflected in her grace, and it terrifies them, because it beckons. It calls out, come home to yourself, come home to your grief, come home to your softness. But not all men are ready. Some will run, not because she is too much, but because she is too real, too raw, too unwilling to pretend, and she is done with pretending. She does not contort herself to be approachable. She does not dim her intensity to soothe someone else's discomfort. She knows that real love is not afraid of fire, it walks into it, and only those who have burned off their masks will walk beside her. She is no longer interested in being desired, she is interested in being met, and so, if a man meets her eyes and turns away, she lets him. She returns to her garden, her books, her music, her morning rituals. She returns to her stillness, because the most magnetic thing about her is this: she does not need you, she chooses you or not. She is not a prize to be won. She is a realm to be entered, and only the courageous may cross that threshold. Only those who have faced their own shadows. Only those who will not flinch in hers. And when a man does stay, when he steps beyond the threshold of fear and into the truth of her, it is not conquest. It is communion. Because what he discovers is not a woman waiting to be softened by love, but a woman already tempered by fire. She does not yield to charm. She responds only to presence. The kind that does not waver under the weight of her gaze. The kind that does not try to fix her, rescue her, tame her, or mold her into comfort. The kind that stands there fully exposed and says, I am here, all of me. She does not fall for words anymore. She falls for consistency, for silence that feels safe, for truth that costs something to speak. For a man whose inner boy has grown into integrity, men like this are rare, but they are not mythical. They are the ones who no longer need to dominate. They don't flinch at her independence. They don't compete with her power. They don't confuse her confidence with arrogance. They have done their own shadow work. They have walked into their pain and made peace with the parts of themselves they once abandoned. And so, when they meet her, they see her clearly, not as a threat, not as a trophy, but as an equal, a mirror, a mystery they do not need to solve, only honor. This is where a sacred union can begin, not built on the brittle foundation of neediness or control, but on the bedrock of individuado, to people whole within, themselves choosing to walk beside each other. No more bargaining for love, no more shrinking to be accepted, no more grasping for attention, mistaking it for affection. She does not want attention. She wants resonance. Because by now she knows, not all energy is nourishment. Some of it is noise. Some of it is performance. And some of it are unmistakable as recognition. That is that recognition that opens her, that invites her softness back out, not as submission, but as sacred offering. Because when she is met in her wholeness, she becomes boundless, not broken, not brittle, not desperate for approval, but alive, again. Men who fear this level of depth will always return to the surface. But the man who has tasted his own ocean will not drown in hers. He will swim, willingly, into the current. He will not panic when the waters grow dark. He will not run when she tells him her truth, because he knows what she is giving is not drama. It is invitation, an invitation to be fully human, fully conscious, fully feeling, and most of all fully present. Only the men who have met their own shadow can stay with a woman who has integrated hers, because the rest will try to silence her, or soften her, or reduce her to something smaller, safer, less alive. They will call her intimidating, when what they mean is, she makes me feel what I've spent my life avoiding. They will call her difficult, when what they mean is, she refuses to be less than what she is. They will call her too much, when what they mean is, I don't yet know how to hold the truth without fleeing, and she no longer takes offense to these projections. She simply walks past them graceful, unapologetic, unreachable by the shallow, because her soul has already bled for too long to waste one more moment on shrinking. She no longer bleeds, but she still births ideas, art, wisdom, love that doesn't cling, freedom that doesn't flinch. She births a new kind of womanhood, one that is not chained to fertility or youth but liberated by the loss of them. In this loss, she gains everything. The shadow was never the enemy, was the map, and now that she has followed it inward, she has emerged not only whole, but holy. She walks differently now, slower, maybe, but every step is a declaration. I have arrived into myself. She speaks less, but when she does, it lands like thunder. She does not look back, because everything she once waited for, permission, attention, redemption, she now carries inside her. She is not afraid of being alone. She is afraid only of abandoning herself again, and that fear ensures she never will. A woman like this cannot be owned. She cannot be contained. She can only be witnessed by those brave enough to meet her, shadow to shadow, soul to soul. There comes a time when a woman no longer waits to be chosen. She no longer asks, am I enough? She knows she is not only enough, she is more than enough for any space that is sacred, true, and ready. She does not need to perform her worth. It radiates from her in quiet, magnetic waves that say, I know who I am, and this is what terrifies the world most of all. A woman over 60 who has embraced her shadow is not broken by the invisibility culture imposes on aging women. She is freed by it, because in being unseen, she becomes unbound. She no longer needs to bend to expectations. She no longer asks for permission. She no longer trades her time for scraps of affection, or her beauty for temporary validation. The world may have stopped looking at her, but now she sees herself. And when a woman sees herself fully, she becomes unstoppable. She reclaims her sensuality not as a performance for the male gaze, but as an offering to her own spirit. Her body may no longer bleed, but it remembers. It remembers the ache of longing, it remembers the tremble of desire, and it remembers how long she kept herself in waiting. No longer. Now she touches herself like a prayer. She dresses not to impress, but to express. The velvet, the linen, the gold at her throat, these are not fashion. They are ritual, because everything she does now is an act of ceremony. Each breath, each sip of tea, each word spoken in truth becomes a sacred act of rebellion against a world that once taught her to apologize for taking up space. She does not apologize anymore. She blesses with her gaze, with her presence, with her power that no longer begs, no longer bargains, no longer pleads. And if a man meets her now, he must come whole. He must bring his own silence, his own shame, his own surrender, because she will not mother him. She will not raise him. She will not carry his weight on her back like she did for so many years with others. She is not here to save him. She is here to choose him, or not. And this is what makes her dangerous. She does not chase, she does not demand, she simply is. And in her being, she forces the truth to rise in others. Her presence is purification. Those who cannot meet her will fall away, not because she banishes them, but because they cannot breathe in the altitude where she now lives. This is the altitude of individuation, the psychological peak where the soul no longer conforms to roles, titles, or social expectations, where she no longer plays the mother, the good girl, the soft body, the understanding wife, the self-sacrificing saint. She plays only herself, and in doing so, she becomes untouchable by anything that once wounded her. She does not fear aging because she no longer fears change. Change is her teacher. Change is her lover. Change is the force that ripped her apart and remade her from bones she thought had crumbled. She is not interested in convincing anyone of her value anymore. She is interested in being, in building, in being near only what is beautiful, what is true, what is whole. She does not seek attention. She creates impact. She does not seek love. She creates connection. She does not seek permission. She creates space, and most of all, she creates herself, again and again, like a phoenix that no longer waits for the flames, but walks into them. With open arms, she understands now what so few do. The shadow was never accursed, it was the portal, and through it, she has become her own oracle, her own sanctuary, her own source of peace. No man, no role, no age will ever define her again, because she has tasted freedom and, once a woman does, she does not go back. She cannot go back. A woman who knows her worth does not pursue, she chooses.